Welcome to SHOWstudio. We are here to talk about the Raf Simons show, which somewhat abnormally, well very abnormally, is in New York this time, which is obviously great for the New York Men's Week, because typically New York Men's Week hasn't been sort of a bastion of experimental fashion. But obviously the fact it is in New York at this time throws up lots of interesting conversations about the state of America at the moment, which is something that I think Raf sort of comments on with his show, but also kind of is, I guess, the road towards his Calvin Klein debut, which is quite exciting. But before we sort of jump into our discussions of his latest offering, I will let my fabulous set of panellists introduce themselves, starting with you, Dean.
I'm Dean Kissick. I'm a writer and I'm associate editor at GQ Style.
I'm Andrew Davis and I'm a stylist.
I'm Anna Pesonen and I'm a stylist as well.
Stylist heavy panel. So tell me, firstly, what do we make of the fact that Raf is kind of going on a grand tour with his shows? So obviously did Pitti, now showing in New York.
I think it's logistics now.
Do you think so?
He's moved his studio to New York rather than show in another country. It's
Yeah,
like
he was
it can all be
saying.
done together.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah, he was saying he wants to work and live in one location.
Mm-hmm. Which makes sense in a
yeah.
way. And I think there is an element, I think, to when you think of New York, you do think of youth culture, and youth culture is something that is so important to his work. I'm kind of interested to see how that comes, which is always something kind of weird about the shows being in Paris, is you never really felt that sort of location fitted that well. Why is Raf so revered as a designer? It's kind of interesting. I was thinking about this with Calvin Klein, and it's this kind of like, you know, the appointment to end all appointments in some way. And what is it about Raf that captures imagination so much, do you think? Dean, what do you think?
Well, he started in 1995, I think. So, and he was doing this kind of youth culture based, like subculture based, slightly street fashion. And I'd imagine that was a newer thing then than it is now. I'd imagine, I think his first Paris show was 1997, and I'm guessing there wasn't so much of that going on like men's catwalks in the 90s. So yeah, I think it's just that it was very young.
It's the veneer of the new.
It was new.
And it was that shift of change. It was like you'd just come through the 90s, where the early 90s, when a lot of them guys were still bigger. You know, the silhouette kind of changed quite dramatically with Prada and Helmut Lang, but also Raf kind of used these like younger, skinnier kind of kids. It was more like a street cast thing than it was than a traditional models. I think that was quite important.
And what do we make, you know, it's interesting, you know, the fact he's showing in New York, he did, I don't want to spoil it, but he did a show that was kind of dedicated to New York. What should fashion's role be, particularly sort of American designers or designers showing in America at the moment, about sort of making comment on the state of America as it is today? Like, I don't know if you've seen with Business of Fashion did a piece a couple of days ago where they commented that none of the big fashion houses have come out against the Muslim ban, you know, as it's been named. How can fashion sort of be political in this time, and should it be political?
I think the bigger houses are very scared. I mean, I think Arnault was one of the first people to meet him after, which is a very telling kind of thing. I think some of the younger designers have done protests within their shows.
But Arnault met Donald Trump?
Yeah.
Really?
I think there was something with like the kids, one of the kids had done a show where they'd written like slogans to do with the Muslim thing and the deportation of people. So I think younger people are free to do that because, you know, they've got no constraints and stuff. Bigger houses are shit scared, I think, to do anything. Definitely.
I think Raf, I mean, this isn't the answer to your question, but Raf, when he started, was doing a lot of skinhead stuff.
Yeah.
And was only casting white models, and was often accused of being a Nazi or having like fascist sympathies, or being like aestheticizing fascism, the look of fascism to sell. And I think, and he gave statements saying like, obviously that's not my politics, but I grew up in a part of Belgium that's all white.
It's all white.
So this is why, you know, I'm not trying to make a statement. Obviously that's not what he does anymore. But it's interesting to see his first show in New York, like at this time, with his background. He also, I don't know if you remember, did that show he did the show 2 months before 9/11 that was all about protest.
Yeah.
And it's kind of seen as like he predicted 9/11 through
It's
fashion
very
or
strange
something
looking at
like
the
that.
footage of that show now, because it's actually kind of quite deeply moving and striking, and you look at it and it's just even more relevant each year that passes, which is super strange. I think there is this difficult thing though with it, like I'm super interested with to see what happens with the Marc Jacobs show, and you know, like what comment is made there, because I'm sure there will be one, you know, that will be super striking and strong. And I get, you know, Mark's one of the only designers apart from Tom Ford who's come out really strongly and said that he will not dress Melania Trump, which, you know, I think it's important in some ways that fashion takes some kind of a stand. I don't know, Anna, what do you think about it? Because it feels like everyone's kind of being quite silent.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to really know how fashion houses or designers could do that. But I kind of, I liked what Raf did this season, because he was merging like his, something from his personal life, him moving to New York and exploring the new location, with a bigger comment, I guess, when we see the pictures from the show, you know, when it's all about security and protection and all of that, and kind of, I like that comment. He wasn't too political, I guess, in a sense, even though he was saying after the show that he wanted to take a stand against.
Do you think it's hard for designers to take a stand, because it always comes back to, you know, fashion and politics can be sort of unhappy bedfellows in some ways, because it is like, you know, an industry that is selling clothes for huge amounts of money. It's kind of an industry that is in many ways based on inequality, trying to sort of then seem to have a social consciousness. Do you think that's part of the problem? Is it? I mean, we've done a series on SHOWstudio, like there's an amazing one called Political Fashion, which kind of explore this topic, but I'm always really interested to hear what sort of people think about fashion's ability to be...
I mean, Raf has to be very careful. You know, he's head of a blue chip company now that trades on Wall Street that makes billions of dollars. It's not just like a little label in Belgium, do you know what I mean? This is like proper. This is selling to the masses. And also, I don't think he can risk that kind of commentary within Calvin, definitely. I don't think there'll be anything there at all. I think maybe when we've undressed these clothes that we're going to see, that maybe there are at the bottom the slogans and stuff, because, you know, he loves to write slogans and poems and things, and maybe there's something there. But I think it's just a very delicate time, isn't it? Do you know what I mean? I think for him as well, he just wants to get on and design clothes. He doesn't want to be a politician.
I think you run the risk of looking very stupid if you're a fashion designer trying to make these grandiose political statements,
like
painting slogans on your clothes. Yeah, you really, because it's very easy to mock. Also, I don't know if you saw this opening ceremony thing they did this week.
What, they're doing the ballet?
They released all these American varsity jackets, like around the theme of immigration, one for each nation. So like flag-themed varsity jackets, and they put it out on Facebook, I think, the Monday after the Muslim ban, like in the morning. Super cynical, just trying to sell these jackets, and everyone went for them. Like every comment was like, "This is so stupid. Like, why isn't the money from these sales going to help these people instead of..."
Is none of the money going to?
Of course it goes to like opening ceremony.
It is difficult that, because, you know, people even say, you know, like brands like Nike have come out and made these comments, and there's always that there's always that sense of cynicism of like, okay, you're only coming out as a way of sort of appealing to a certain audience. But I guess it's hard it's interesting what Andrea is saying, if you're a huge brand like Calvin Klein, you are appealing to middle America. So it's like, there's the
difference. You're exporting to the rest of the world, and the government is controlling how much you do it and what taxes and fines and import duties you pay on everything from cloth to the final product. So I think they have to be super careful, unfortunately.
Because Calvin Klein's a huge brand in America. It's not really a fashion brand, it's more it's like a low-range brand.
It's like a Coke or something like that.
But it is internationally. I mean, you know, there's licenses all over the world in every territory. It's a massive business. There are, you know, like 200 stores in Asia.
What do we think of his appointment to Calvin Klein? And you know, some of the stuff has started coming out, this kind of by appointment thing.
So I think the images are beautiful. I think they've been really overthought, though. I think this is like third, fourth attempt of shooting them, and I'm sure that they've been shown to like the CEO and the people that control the money and the licenses, saying, well, this is great, but there's no logo anywhere. This is a brand that's based on a logo. Even if there's one image with a logo, and showing a part of the underwear at the side, that's just the classic underwear. And also, it doesn't really trace itself back to the brand. It traces itself back to America. You know, Calvin hated ball gowns. Yeah, that's a really famous comment of his. And one of the things, a giant tutu.
Yeah, which it looks very Raf for Dior.
Yeah, which is beautiful. Yeah, but it's like when you kind of saw that at Dior.
At Dior,
I mean, for me, slightly disappointing, even though they are beautiful, beautiful images.
I wonder that I couldn't quite understand the benefit of releasing them before the show, because you think the show is going to be such an amazing sort of, you know, immersive introduction to what Raf's aesthetic is for Calvin Klein, whereas this kind of drip feed, without much clarity, felt a little odd to me. But maybe it's...
Yeah, it felt odd. Like,
I mean, I think the show will be the cleanest, simplest thing that he can do.
Do you think?
I think so, because I think that's what, when he did his first Jill Sander men's collection, it was beautiful and it was really simple. And then it kind of got more bonkers as he got more confident with the label and stuff. But to start with, it was very, you know, wouldn't shake anyone's perception of it and stuff.
Yeah, it's quite eclectic, the different imagery, I think. But it didn't feel, you know, these were the weirdest sets of imagery. So the Abbey Lee, what's-her-face ones, Abbey Lee Kershaw, just was weird. It didn't feel, it was quite really sexual. And I know Calvin Klein is a really sensual brand, like you think of that.
I think when we see the underwear campaign, the underwear has built itself on beautifully amazing fitting underwear that fits that gorgeous body. I think they've shot the underwear on Natalie Westling and lots of skinny people. And that Middle America won't understand those images, definitely. Yeah. I don't think they'll understand it in Asia. I think it's cool for like 1,000 fashion people. Yeah. But they are keeping that brand alive.
Well, it's a big change from the Mike Calvin's thing, which was kind of I thought that was a brilliant campaign. Like aesthetically, it was relevant.
It worked so well for them.
But it appealed to fashion people.
And it felt really inclusive.
Yeah.
And you know, what they're going to do next is not going to feel so inclusive.
What do you think of the appointment?
Well, I don't know if it means, is he like going to do a lot of stuff? Is he going to be really involved, or is he just going to not?
I think based on what his salary is there. Did you hear when that got announced? It was something crazy.
What's his salary?
It was something like 12 million or something.
I thought it was
18.
80.
80. It was something insane.
It's a good salary.
Which might not be true at all. But also what's really interesting is the appointment. So he is Chief Creative Officer, and then Peter Mulier, I never know how quite you say that, Mulier, who kind of was the star, like who emerged through that Dior and I documentary, like Raf's kind of right-hand man, the most adorable man in the world, who I'm like obsessed with, is the creative director of Calvin Klein. So that's super interesting as well, because then it's kind of like, you know, is it that Peter's kind of designing and Raf is overseeing, you know, I find that interesting. But yeah, I think he'll do it.
I mean, maybe because it's a massive brand. It's not just men's and women's.
No,
it's white label. It's jeans. It's underwear. It's golf.
Fragrance.
It's children.
Fragrance,
It's like a huge responsibility from someone who didn't want all of that responsibility at Dior.
I was confused by that in terms of, you know, he's very like wanting a quiet life and then doing this, but maybe
I think he'd love a quiet life, but he hasn't got the money for a quiet life at the moment. So I think he wants the money, then he can buy his art collection, and then retire. I think that's the goal.
Yeah.
Definitely.
I wonder how long he'll do it for. That's what I'm really interested to see.
I don't know how long the contract is actually.
Well, maybe he has more freedom now, in a way.
Yeah.
Dior.
Yeah,
if you oversee everything.
Yeah, there is more freedom. Yeah. Dior is things like do the collection, but you can't touch the stores. And
I would imagine after the first set of images, they're all quite nervous, from the CEO to the licensees to everybody.
But do you always think it's so big that it can't really fail? Do you know what I mean? Like, it's like you can't really, something that big, you can't really fuck it up, can you?
It be the biggest, most expensive fashion fail that's ever going to happen. Do you know what I mean? It's one or the other, definitely.
But he's never going to destroy the brand.
No,
do you know what I mean?
Not at all. But he's not going to do maybe what's right for the brand or for the business.
Do you think the problem is trying to make it cool? Should Calvin Klein just not be cool?
I don't think it wasn't not cool. I felt like it was a cool brand. I mean, I understood, you know, like the new campaigns, I thought they were unbelievable. They were so great. They talked to so many different people.
These are perfect. They're much better, I think, than those images we just saw from But with all these Tyrone campaigns, were they done before Calvin got involved?
Before, yeah, they were done
Raf got
before.
involved, yeah.
So it's a mixture. Most of them are Tyrone, but also Harley Weir did some, and Jamie Hawksworth did some as well. But it's mainly Tyrone. But just the cast of characters in it was like
really great idea.
So many, and they were very funny, some of them. And I just thought, like, to do a campaign that actually moves way beyond imagery and almost becomes like something that people actually say. You know, like how few times does advertising do that anymore? Like actually create a kind of a sentence or a slogan that is memorable. Like everyone tries to do it. It's like, you know, Tesco Every Little Helps or whatever it's called, and all of that stuff. But it never happens anymore. It never happens in fashion. And I thought this was super, super clever. And just using the language of like social media, super clever.
I think it's very hard to do advertising for Calvin Klein because those 90s things were basically the most iconic adverts of our generation, and you'll see them on photographers' mood boards or magazine ideas meetings. You'll see it like week in, week out forever, so it's almost impossible to follow. And I thought this was like amazing. It was incredible that they could follow it and do this new aesthetic. So then to move on to another thing, having just done this, seems like deeply stupid.
But also it was sorry, new young people shooting this the campaign imagery, and obviously now it's going to be the same people that always collaborate with Raf. So in a way that's why it was really exciting as well, because you could see young people doing big campaigns. And
it's not even just young people, it's like a new voice. Do you know
Oh,
what I mean?
yeah,
Like
that's
something,
what I mean.
do you know what I
Yeah,
mean? Like
yeah.
just something slightly like...
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's what I mean.
I think it was the inclusivity of it that I found interesting, that it was like really, really kind of encouraging absolutely anyone to sort of engage with it. Whereas the Raf thing is, I mean, I think they're absolutely beautiful images, but they're very refined. And I don't know if something that is refined and sort of tasteful and slightly intellectual and so considered maybe fits with a brand like Calvin, where it is more of a mass brand.
But if it gets people into those stores, because they have some of the primest real estate in America, and no, those stores are dead. And
But
they
what
have
do you think
been
of the
dead.
buy
The
appointment
collection
thing?
store.
Yeah.
So if that gets a new customer into the store, then that's amazing.
Yeah.
That's a great way of doing it, definitely.
Should we have a look at Raf's collection? Yeah. Zoom away from Calvin Klein. So it's interesting, I feel like this has been like the season of logos and text.
Yeah.
It's like crazy logo mania come back. And then obviously because he's done the Milton Glaser, like I Heart New York, and the shout outs to him, I thought it was quite interesting. But just text everywhere. And it's weird the kind of text that people are doing. It's kind of like, I was thinking about the Balenciaga show with that, the Bernie Saunders with the sort of motif with the Balenciaga logo over it. It's kind of they're kind of like weird jokes. Like there's a lot of text where it kind of means nothing, but it kind of infers something. And I think that's kind of, it's quite interesting. It is, but it's kind of that version of like a status update where it's a little kind of joke. It's like a funny aside or what have you.
But I think with Raf, it's not like that. I think it's, well, he always has these prints and text and words, and I think it's quite meaningful.
Yeah, and the way he places images sometimes, almost like sort of stamped or collaged. I think it's hard also with this collection because like the Maplethorpe collection was like so incredible and amazing and timely. So it's kind of always like, how do you follow that?
And almost that would have been a great collection to show in America.
Oh my god, amazing! Yeah.
I think this is him growing up as well. Do you know what I mean? I think it's a very grown-up collection, really, compared to what we've seen before. I think he's researched as much as he can about America. I mean, for me, it's basically like the 90s Calvin and Donna Karan workwear, you know, like the long coats and stuff, the businessman, the Wall Street guy, American Psycho. I think that it's quite a mature approach to what he normally does.
But then a lot of his references are really American. If you think, you know, even like that sort of the varsity-esque things that he, you know, you always associate with his work. And
I think this is the older guy now, this is the working guy, this is not the teenager or the rebel or the young.
I feel like it's someone like in between, like it's not fully mature either. But
He gave a quote about it where he said, "I've been coming to New York for 20 years now. I wanted to go back to how I experienced it at the beginning and combine it with how I experience it now. It's this fresh, young attraction to the city and everything it stands for in combination with what's happening now." He has been quite sort of like willingly political in some of his comments. Like he said, I think when you have a voice and when you want to have a voice, you can't just walk around it. I feel I need to do something. It doesn't matter if you reach out to 10 people or 100,000 people or millions of people. When you have a voice, you should use it now. Which is quite interesting comments, but it's not, it doesn't feel like a criticism, you know, the collection. It feels like a celebration of America, which is quite interesting because to celebrate New York, it's kind of like...
Yeah, I think he's super excited to be there. And I think this is like the precursor to his Calvin show, definitely.
But I guess it's that thing of celebrating an America or American values. You know, a lot of people are criticising Trump and saying it's anti-American, which I think is a really interesting criticism to use. And to do a collection that kind of is... Like Riccardo Tisci actually did a really similar thing at the men's shows in Paris. His collection was about America and his like idea of America when he was a boy. So it was this kind of idea of celebrating what America like was or could be. And this is kind of what New York symbolises, you know, pre what's happening now. What do you make of it, Dean?
Well, I don't think it makes any statement.
No.
I don't see anything. I don't know what he's saying. Like, I don't see anything anti-Trump or pro-immigration or anything like that whatsoever. Like you say, it's more celebratory.
Celebratory.
But I think it has that like that feeling of protection and needing security and like almost. There's one look. I think it's one of the very last looks or something. But it says, what does the T-shirt say? Any way out, or is there any way out, or something like that? We'll see it soon. Yeah, any way out of this. And then it says, I love you, I heart you in that knit. So it's almost like...
Well, that I love you, Milton Glaser made the I love New York thing. So that is a kind, and a play on, and to use something that's like, I love New York, which is such an iconic American symbol right now. I think there is something quite, you're right, it's not like, it's not overtly political, but it's drip feeding enough that, you know, but Raf's one of his designers is very clever because he makes other people feel clever. So it gives, you know, journalists something to write about and they will build these theories on out of it. And it's almost like the pieces themselves may not be political, but they will become politicized from how people read them or shoot them or write about them. And I think that's kind of what's vaguely clever about it.
I definitely agree with Andrew that it's very grown up.
Yeah, I mean, compared to dresses in a clunky sneaker collection, I mean, that was like bonkers.
But Raf is you know, commercially, Raf Simons isn't a hugely successful brand. You know, that's what's always so interesting about it, is that it's so acclaimed, but is not like smashing it, you know, commercially, which has always been kind of part of the appeal for me, is that it's...
But when you see the selling collection, normally, there's just one of everything. It's the most plain sweatshirt, T-shirt, sometimes the little logo. I mean, this was like a few years ago and I saw the whole selling collection. But yeah, I mean, there was something for everybody, definitely. And the cuts were kind of, there were lots of different cuts. It wasn't just one cut of something, so.
I don't know if I'd agree that it feels grown up though, but I just think the styles feel like the kind of things that young people want to wear now, which are naturally more grown up. Like if you think about the fact that Gosh is doing suits, and Balenciaga is largely like repositioning workwear. I think young people, well, designers that are traditionally seen to explore young people or create clothes that cater to young people are doing things that look grown up, you know, like trenches or suits or tailoring or tweed. So I think that this kind of ties into that, which actually like this association with streetwear and youth is maybe getting slightly questioned by fashion now, which I think is relatively interesting. Like, you know, when you think of Balenciaga, I think more of a suit than I do of a sweatshirt, and I think that's kind of interesting, and this kind of ties with that. I think something super sporty can feel a bit dated now, maybe, and a little bit old-fashioned, but... And
I think him generally is like perceived as more dated, more old-fashioned than it would have been a few years ago, because of like Jonathan Anderson and Vetements, like the spotlight is less on him. Because it's been on him for well over a decade, you know.
Yeah.
He's been like the
designer,
cool men's designer. That's changing a bit, like.
So do you think he's not as exciting as he once was? Is that what you're saying?
Well, it's not. I mean, it's great because it's like a Raf collection. I mean, I don't know his archive exhaustively enough to know if there's like new ideas in here. But I don't see it and see anything that's like, wow, I've never seen Raf do that before.
Yeah.
But neither should it really. Like, he started showing in Paris 20 years ago, so
Yeah.
there's a lot of collections. I'm not saying he should make any political statements
No.
or be like reinventing the wheel.
I actually like it when he refers to his own collections. Those tend to be my favourite collections. When he did, I can't remember what season it was because I can never remember seasons, but the big oversized varsity one, it was like 2 seasons ago. Yeah. And that was basically like 4 past collections that he kind of remashed and remade. And I think it's kind of more interesting sometimes.
But from a business point of view, how clever to do something quite grown up when, you know, there's thousands of people in America that probably never heard of Raf. The minute he had the appointment, more people are getting to know who he is and stuff. So I think more people are going to know about him now. So he's designing for a bigger audience, I think, not necessarily those, 1,500 fashion kids.
Another interesting thing, it's like he's kind of like moved the men's waist to like kind of the middle of your abdominals throughout, with like tying everyone up there, and all the sweaters end there. So
Are you going to make that
like
your
a
new look?
silhouette. I am on a diet. Yeah, I could.
I don't know if it is a
could be
new
on-
silhouette though, because I
is it
think
not a new silhouette?
that, well, no, it kind of is, but I think that I think until about 3 seasons ago, the idea of men in a crop jacket was just not a thing. Whereas now that it is again, it's like the Balenciaga like crop thing, I just think the eye has shifted slightly, and it's more
Raf has done that ages ago.
ages ago, yeah.
But maybe this the tape that says "Walk with me." What does it say?
Walk with me, yeah. Which was on the invite as well, on the envelope.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is like I guess, a reference to the duct tape
Yeah.
that says fragile. But Margiela has done that, so I don't know if that's like the exact same thing. So maybe that's also his reference, like homage to my town.
Yeah. Quite possibly.
But it's
Girly
almost like
necklace.
I know the necklaces are weird.
I was just gonna say it's almost like a reference to Dior or something.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it's also just like gap year-y and stuff. It's weird.
Grannies and gaffer tape, isn't it?
But it was meant to be, he also talked about like looking at punk, which I thought was kind of super weird because I don't see this as a punkish collection at all. Like I just don't,
Yeah.
I mean, maybe if he means punk in terms of like spirit rather than in terms of sort of any sort of aesthetic.
Or young American punk.
But even the slogans, like they're not particularly like, obviously there's the I Love New York and then Youth Project, which is just like classic Raf. And then Out of This Nightmare, which, I mean, that one's a bit more punchy, but like...
And that one, everyone will take that to another meaning, won't they? Do you know what I mean? So that will be like his political take on America.
Yeah, but I think that's...
But that's good.
Yeah. So we don't seem to be hugely sort of bowled over by it.
Well, it'd be nice to have those clothes,
Yeah, I
Please
mean, I
consider
hope it's a nice cashmere coat, but I don't know if I want to put sticky tape on a cashmere coat.
But that's a styling trick, isn't it? It's just that kind of...
Yeah, I like to be authentic though, Lou.
I just think it's really hard. I think once you've done that Maplethorpe collection, kind of whatever he does is not going to seem as punchy. Is it? Like, it's just nothing's going to be as... That was such a solid visual statement, and it was like, you knew exactly what it was about, and it was almost a little bit costumey because the...
And amazing to get that permission to use those.
So
images,
amazing.
unbelievable.
But that was such a flexing of muscle in some way of his own importance and his own, how respected he is within the art world, that people would sort of do that. Whereas I guess it's just, I think it felt like the perfect time to do a collection that had a really clear statement, whereas this, it doesn't like the fact that we're like, oh, it's kind of about this, but it's kind of about that, or is it about this? It's just, there's not that same punch to it, which is fine, I guess, but it's not gonna...
But there are things in there that are very Calvin, those long coats, they feel like very Calvin, and
Grey sweatshirt.
Since he's been appointed, he's had access to Calvin's archive, which is unbelievable. From
Yeah.
Polaroids of Calvin, of himself, trying on looks, because they never used to have looks models. Calvin used to try the looks on, and Polaroid himself.
That's cool.
And pictures of Jerry Hall as the looks model for the women's wear. Like,
Yeah.
the archive is really, and it's all on a database, and then it's all in a warehouse, and it's really easy accessible.
Oh, wow. That's
So
amazing.
he's got a wealth of things to look through, like he did at Dior as well.
Have you been to the archive? Wow, that's nice. Yeah, that is interesting. I don't know, I guess also he's doing his Calvin women's debut in what, like a week? So it's like, you're not going to do anything that's going to be too much of a smash hit. I don't know, I think I'm frustrated in some way. I just think, I was looking at all the headlines this morning, and there was a lot of sort of hot air about how political this was and what a statement it was. And I just kind of feel a bit frustrated, like not with him, because as we kind of all said, like, do what you want, you know, it is hard for designers when you want to make clothing to be forced to kind of somehow become a spokesperson for sort of like, you know, liberal Europe or whatever. But I don't know, I just found it a bit annoying that fashion's kind of being so
supportive.
Yeah, and not really saying anything or doing anything, and then to make everyone feel better, everyone's writing these articles being like, oh, so political, you know, how amazing, how punchy, and I'm like, this made, you know, the 400 people in the room feel better about themselves. We're probably not really taking any stand or doing anything, but in terms of actual, like, you know, when there's so much direct action happening, like, it was more how it was reported than what was shown that got on my nerves.
We saw it coming, we knew it was going to happen. We were really shocked by it. We're all upset, but then people kind of just get on, and he's being accepted. The more time goes on, the more people are accepting him.
I think the thing that I find really annoying is I think if he was making attacks on like LGBT community or things to do with gender, fashion would really speak out. Yeah. But because it's things that relate to ethnicity and race, it's really fucking uncomfortable for fashion people to say anything. So that's partly why everyone's like, oh, this is kind of awkward because we could make a stand, but we kind of only cast white models, so maybe let's not. So it's, and it is just annoying that, you know, those issues that fashion kind of like speaks about and then the ones that it just ignores. I just think that's, I don't know, I'm kind of going on a rant now. What do you think, Dean?
I've got nothing. I agree with you.
He'd like a 3/4 coat, he'd be happy.
Yeah, he's just like, I want that
and
coat.
a crop top.
And a trip to New York.
Anna's going to go bonkers for all that gaffer tape, aren't you, love?
Yeah.
It's just weird. The thing with doing a New York symbol though is it's weird because I'm like, who's going to buy that now? Do you know what I mean? Like, I'm like, would a European kid in the current climate want to wear a sweater that has the word New York on it?
It's that slogan that's on a t-shirt everywhere in Times Square, but it's in Leicester Square, it's everywhere. There's those slogans everywhere.
But how sort of post-ironic is the idea of wearing a top that says I love New York in the current environment? You know, you can bet there'll be like street style kids wearing them, and it's a bit like, is that, it's a bit weird, you know? I don't know.
It would be a weird sort of political statement to spend £800
on the top that says I love New York, and then
as part of this supposedly politicized collection.
Yeah, it's kind of like I was thinking about that with people wearing the Bernie Sanders Balenciaga stuff. It's like, okay, like what statement are you making? Like what? Yeah, I think that's the problem with all of this though, is whenever someone does something like that, I always then think of someone wearing it, and then I think how stupid that person wearing it would look. Like,
maybe it's not to be worn though, maybe it's for your archive. There are a lot of people that collect, Raf.
I think the Bernie Sanders...
We're all obsessed.
No, I love him. I think he's amazing. I'm not actually criticising, I'm really not criticising him. I think I got annoyed with the kind of like flurries of sort of, you know, overexcited reporting on it. And I just thought, you know, come on guys, like fuck me, like if you're going to act like he somehow sort of saved the world, which I'm sure was not his intention, you know, like when I thought of everyone rushing backstage and asking about Trump, and he's given these quotes that are going to be heralded as like Raf takes a stand, and it's like, does he really? No, not at all. Which he shouldn't, you know, he can't and shouldn't, and probably, well, he could, but it would sort of be pointless, you know. I don't know.
The New York thing is a bit weird in the wake of Balenciaga having done the Bernie Sanders thing. Because it's just like a tamer version of that. And the Bernie Sanders thing, I think, was really controversial. Like in my feeds, just getting slayed. Like everyone was saying, this is so fucking stupid. But because of it, that image, like everyone sees it, even if you see it with commentary saying it's dumb. Whereas this is just like, it's kind of neither here nor there. It's like
they're very different designers though. Raf is quite an earnest designer, you know, there's not much cynicism in a Raf collection. They tend to be about his obsessions or his heroes, what have you. Balenciaga collections, you know, part of their appeal, and also with Vetements, is that there is this sense of cynicism, of apathy, of loftiness. So it's a very different thing when they do a sort of Bernie Sanders logo, because you're not sure who they're laughing at, you know, and they are very good at doing these slogans that kind of like, I mean, I saw it in exactly the same box as the Justin Forever logo. It's this kind of like taking this thing that everyone's talking about and making a kind of pithy comment, and it's like, how droll, you know, and that's kind of the appeal of Balenciaga, is that it's that shrug, you know, like meh, okay, whatever, like, and that kind of makes it seem very cool to certain people, but you're never sure. You're never sure what they're investing in that, you know, if it is a political statement, if it relates to anything they think, or if it was just kind of like, oh, that'd be funny, let's do that. And that's part of the mystery that is so appealing about Balenciaga. I think Raf's is a very different thing. You know, his collections, there's not irony in the way that there is with Balenciaga. So when he does a I Love New York thing, I'm not like, okay, so what's the joke? You know, who's he mocking?
No, I think it's genuine.
Yeah.
It's just exploring his new location and I guess, yeah.
That's one of the things, if you've been travelling to New York, maybe, you know, he would have been, what, late teens, early 20s when he travelled there for the first time. This is one of the strongest things that you see when you're out and about in America.
And I guess also in the like, I don't know, like New York, it's kind of like, you know, there's this weird thing that's happening at the moment in different, like how London's kind of become this weird nucleus, and everyone in London is like, but we're liberal, we want to, you know, there was all that campaign to like make London its own state that can stay in the EU, and there is this weird thing happening of, you know, cities kind of moving them, or states moving themselves away from the country as a whole, and New York is obviously very liberal, so there is something that kind of makes sense about, in some ways, like this championing of New York, because it's almost like, okay, you know, they didn't go how the rest of America went. You know, New York is liberal. Like, you know, we're multicultural. We're, you know.
Although, you know, it is the home of Trump, and it is.
Yeah, no, I know.
All operations have been run.
But he didn't win his own city, so you know that should make us all feel better.
What does that print T-shirt say?
The one with all the different logos.
Yeah, I'm actually wearing the old one under here.
Give us a spin.
Yeah. It's somewhere here. I'm mic'd up next time. But is that with like brand logos as well?
Yeah, it looks like a mixture of brand logos, and some of them are just sort of little kind of random words. I think actually if you go on Charlie Porter's Instagram, he put a really good picture of it up, so maybe we could have a look at that. I think his Instagram's the Charlie Porter.
Maybe that's the comment. If he has like Uber logo.
Well, when I first saw it, I thought it was like a Dries thing, because you know when Dries put all his suppliers on stuff, and I was like, oh, is he doing that?
Maybe it's all Trump supporters. Maybe it's all the big brands.
Uber and all of that.
Yeah.
It's the slowest internet in the world. What is that? Okay, we will wait. Yeah, I just find it, I don't know, I think it's going to be, I think I'm also like, I'm wrapped up in the fact that I'm going to New York this weekend, and I just think it's going to be so weird to be. Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah, but it's going to be really, really weird, I think, to be in that city. Well, it's a bit like, it's just, you know, like, I remember when Brexit happened in the middle of the Paris men's shows, and it was like Junior was the first show afterwards, and everyone was just sat there like,
I was doing a show on the same day.
It's weird, isn't it? Yeah. And you were like walking into the shows, and I remember all the international press like kind of coming up to the British press and being like, oh, I'm so sorry, and everyone kind of like sitting there. And I kind of feel like that's what it's going to be like being in so it's that third one along, thank you. So it's going to be like, you know, all the New York press kind of feeling sheepish. So it kind of looks like, it's like brand names. It's weird, isn't it? I don't, like nothing kind of, I like it as a kind of, visually it's appealing,
Fun
but...
games.
Good idea. It's not new though. Catherine Hamlet did that years ago.
I think that the statement to the left.
Yeah, what was the quote? Yeah.
Wait, on the other one?
Like the most recent Instagram.
Yeah.
You know, it's such an empty statement. Like it's empty to the point
I would say
of like
yes.
meaninglessness.
Why do you say that?
Because if youth should stand up against what's happening in this country, I would say yes, yes. Great. Like, it's so dumb, you know?
Yeah. But then it goes back to that issue of context, and it's like, this is kind of what I was saying about how it's going to be such a weird fashion week. It's like, every designer is going to get asked their thoughts on it after their show and be forced to make some kind of vague, meaningless statement.
Yeah.
And then it's like...
And a lot of people will avoid those questions, I think.
But everyone's going to run back after every show. You know, how does it feel to be showing in America right now? And that's what I can't work out is like... it doesn't help fashion look any more involved or politicized, but then it's like you kind of can't not ask those questions. But then I always think kind of, what was Raf meant to say? You know, like it's kind of what anyone would say. Like it's kind of, you know, when I was like, should fashion be political? It's kind of like, well, yeah, but you know, how, like, you know, what's he going to turn around and like, fuck Trump? Like it's really hard. The America slogan thing, I just can't quite get my head around. I just find it a little bit weird. The thought of all these kind of like, you know, fuck boys wearing gosh or tracksuit bottoms than like an America t-shirt at the show just makes me feel a little bit like, okay, that's kind of weird. Like, look at you, it's so ironic and cool.
But they're not trying to make a statement. They're just wearing it because it's cool. So
yeah, exactly. That's what I mean.
Yeah.
It's like reception that I always take more of the issue with than the designer's intention, because it's like.
yeah.
So were you impressed or underwhelmed?
I quite like it. I quite like
but
it.
it's a bit meh.
It's a bit what?
Meh.
I really like these looks where it's like, it's almost like that. He has like his dad's clothes, his mom's pearls or whatever.
Well, that was that
Yes,
thing.
and,
It was like kids
left
growing up and
home,
adopting their parents' uniform. That
Go
was, like,
to the
one
new
of things.
location, stuff,
Yeah.
and like, I don't know. I quite like it.
I like it in terms of clothes. Like everything's sort of like I really like Raf Simons. I wear Raf Simons pieces. They're beautiful. I just think it's really hard at this time to be like.
Yeah.
I mean,
I always think he shouldn't have done anything that was to do with America or New York, almost, and just been like.
but I guess it was more personal, like him moving there and really like exploring how that.
But then just like
feels.
feel the mood of the time, you know? Like it's like good for you enjoying New York, but like everyone else is not enjoying America.
Yeah.
I do think he's an amazing designer. Like, I'm so excited to see what he does at Coven. I just think it's like such an awkward time to be, you know, it's such an awkward time to be having a debut in New York, because you can't really be like all bells and whistles, like wow, 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 because it's not the mood. So everything's got to be like a little bit ironic and kind of angry and political, and it's just a really weird time to try and do anything that's not going to be read in these really sort of, yeah, difficult ways. You seem underwhelmed by it, Dean.
Well, yeah. It's just, it leaves me cold.
What do you expect? He's got a massively new job.
Yeah.
He's probably seen this not as many times as he normally does.
Yeah.
They're nice clothes, you know.
I'd
I'd
feel
like
like
to
he
own them.
styles himself.
No.
I feel like someone in the studio does everything and they show him versions of everything and he approves something. I like that it's diverse though. It's great casting.
Yeah, the casting is
That's
nice.
really nice. I like that there's some like old Raf boys there, then there's lots of new faces.
So we like it, but we're not bowled over.
We're really happy he's in New York.
Maybe there's someone staying in New
Yeah,
York.
I hope he's enjoying his new life in New York. He's
Got
settling
10
in
days.
nicely.
He's settling in
Made some
nicely.
friends.
He's made some good
you know,
friends.
all that sort of thing. Found a nice place to live.
Found a coffee shop.
Bought some nice art. Got a dog.
Should we
Joined
give
a gym.
Should we give him a round of applause to wrap things up?